Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason Gray. I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the Inland Wetlands Commission in Monroe. It is February 23rd, 2019. It is currently 7:03 p.m. The first order of, I said that right. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to introduce the members of the commission present here tonight. Currently, starting on my far right is Commissioner Clark Gingras. Next is Ross Mastroraco. To my immediate right is Commissioner James Stewart. He is a professional engineer and a licensed land surveyor. And he's also our treasurer. To my left is Lois Spence, who is our secretary. Next is Donna Szynski, who's our inland and wetlands, inland wetlands agent. Next is Scott Schatzline, who's a licensed professional engineer, town engineer, and our inland wetlands agent. And Sarah Stroud, who is our clerk in training.
She could probably just be our clerk.
Clerk now?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sarah Stroud, our clerk extraordinaire. Before we start, I'll read our mission statement and how the meeting will proceed. The objective and purpose of our Inland Wetlands Commission is to provide for the overall protection and preservation of the inland wetlands and water courses within the town of Monroe. In the normal course of our meetings, we'll hear public hearing and other applications. The protocol for public hearing is to have the applicant make a representation or presentation to the commission, during which and after which the commission will be asking the applicant questions. The commission will then review town, staff, and other independent comments. The meeting will then be opened up to the public for comment. I will ask that all comments be made to the chair or the commission. After any and all comments pro, in opposition, or of a general nature are made, the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond. It is not necessary that the applicant respond, but generally in their best interest to do so. There will be no further opportunity for new questions unless new materials are entered in as evidence or testimony during the response. Please keep any and all comments pro, con, specific to inland wetlands related matters. Other applications that do not involve a public hearing will follow a similar format, with the exception that there will be no public comments allowed. The meeting follows our published agenda unless otherwise amended. Our agenda is up on the front table in white today if anybody needs a copy. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Yes. We have 3 additions to item number 5, application determinations. The first is IWC 2019-04, 5 Bridge Road. It's the creation of 2 residential lots with dwellings and associated site improvements. There's also the addition of IWC 2019-05, 5 Bridge Road, a single-family home with associated site improvements. And, I made a mistake, IWC 2019-06, 269 Purdy Hill Road, 25-unit age-restricted housing with associated improvements and conversion of an existing building on the property to a 2-bedroom home. And I think that's all that I have. Do you have anything else?
Thank you. For the record, Commissioner Keith Romano has joined us.
I just had one more thing. Under general discussion and other, I just wanted to add discussion about citations.
Item 12.
Thank you. Okay. So now is a period of time reserved for public participation, not related to anything on our agenda tonight, but is related to inland and wetlands matter in town of Monroe. Does anybody have anything of a general nature? Okay, moving forward, there is no subdivision report or recommendations to P&Z. Moving on to our regulated activities. Our first is a regular meeting, IWC 2018-15, 575 Monroe Turnpike. Faria, I'm sorry if I butchered that, installation of a new septic system including leach fields and expand parking area, continued from our last meeting.
Chairman, Chris Russo, on behalf of the applicant Antonio Ferreira and the owner Carolyn Green for the property located at 575 Monroe Turnpike. Good to be before you again on this matter. As you may recall, this is with regards to a child daycare center within an existing building at 575 Monroe Turnpike that is currently has a single residential dwelling unit and an office area. We took your comments from the last hearing and also the comments that we had received from staff. We made a number of revisions to address those comments, and we submitted last Wednesday the plans that you have in front of you. Subsequent to that, on last Friday, we received a revised set of comments from Scott. We have actually made revisions based on those comments. I have those revised plans with me. I could hand it out to you. I would say, I hate to call changes minor or revisions minor. I think they're minor compared to revisions from the plans that are in front of you. I have the new plans out on the, I'll put them up on the screen for you. So I'll leave that to you if you want me to hand those out so you have, that you can go off of those while we're going through this, or.
You have copies with you?
I have copies, yes.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay. So I'm here with Mike Paterla from Huntington Company. He will go through a majority of the changes. They're more technical, so he's better to handle them. I'll just speak to three things. The first was there was a comment from Commissioner Seamus at the last hearing. They had submitted in writing regarding the size of the plantings, particularly the witch hazel and the rhododendron. We increased the size per his comments. We increased it to 4 to 5 feet, where we had showed those particular plantings, trying to address his comment. The second is, and this is probably the biggest revision that you've seen from when we originally spoke on this site, and that is we made an adjustment to the parking area based on comments that we received from P&Z. This is the revised site plan. The existing parking area at the site is, it's kind of tough to see up here, which line that runs right along here. Originally, when we first came before you, the parking area then extended up here and over this way. Because we're changing the zone of this property to a business zone, there has to be a setback from a residential zone property, which this property is. And that setback for something like a new parking area is 30 feet. So we're maintaining where the existing parking area is right here, but where we're expanding a new parking area, we're setting it back 30 feet. So that's visually looking at what we're doing at the site. That's the biggest change. So this area which right here, which is the new parking area, is now set back 30 feet from the property line. One of the benefits of that is it actually moves it farther away from that water course that runs on the neighbor's property that you can see right here. So we used to be right here, pretty close to that. Now we're 30 feet back. And we did that while still being able to, if you look at the wetland buffer plan, we were able to do that and still stay on the right side of where we had proposed the wetland buffer. So we're not interfering with that, but we are able to kind of pull this farther away from the water course. The other thing I'll just touch upon, at the last hearing, we received comments from Aquarian, Joe Welsh from Aquarian, who we had not spoken to at that point. I called Mr. Welsh, went through, he knows a lot about the property. He's He's managed that aquarium piece for quite a time. So we discussed that we were addressing some of his comments. I think Mike will go through that with you, but he asked for wetlands markers. We're putting in wetlands markers. He asked us to beef up the silt fence area with hay bales. Mike will go through what we're proposing to protect the wetlands. I sent him all of our plans, which he hadn't received all of them, especially the wetlands buffer plan, so he didn't know that we were proposing a whole buffer that, was running the entire width of the property. So I sent him that to look over, and I also told him that we had gone to the health department, worked with them extensively, and we had gotten approval for our septic system. So I sent all that documentation to him. I told him that we were having a meeting tonight. He has not responded to me. I called him again today to try to see if he had time to review it. I haven't heard anything from him. I don't know if he submitted any comments to town, but send him everything, and I feel like we've addressed his comments with this application. That's really it, I think, on my end. I'll turn it over to Mike because he handled the majority of the changes.
Members of the commission, my name is Michael Paterla. I'm a licensed land surveyor, professional engineer here in the state of Connecticut, also a member of the Huntington Company. Our office is in Fairfield. From Mr. Welch's letter from January 23rd, his number one comment was to mark the wetlands boundaries. We have no problem with that. I would suggest or say tonight that on our plan, we call out the site disturbance line, which one of the commission asked to be more specific, and we did that on the revised plan that's in front of you now. I can say we can put wetlands markers along that line if it's okay once Scott reviews the plan.
So you guys do you have these plans that you submitted digitally so you can show them?
Yeah, that's right. That's this one.
So it is on there?
Yeah,
That's
these
what
are the
you're looking
latest
at.
plans.
All right, so you want to probably point that out?
Yeah, so here's the disturbance line right here.
And you notice right up to the left side, it's calling it out. And there's also a detail of that, because again, on Aquarian's letter, his number 2, I'm sorry, number 3, what we had proposed last time was just a simple one row of silt fence. So he suggested we put silt fence and hay. What I put on the detail on the 4th sheet in front of you is a row of hay bales with a silt fence in front and back. So it's going to be a distinct boundary. So it's 2 rows of silt fence and a row of hay bales in between them. Also on his in his letter, his items 4, 5, and 6. I put notes on the site plan, which is the 2nd sheet in front of you. My notes 12, 13, and 14 cover his concerns for his 4, 5, and 6. Going to the town of Scott's comments of February 8th. His number 2 was a completed bond estimate. I don't think we gave it to your commission. We did give it to P&Z last time, so I'd like to present this to you.
Just as a clarification, is this the same bond form that you gave to P&Z?
Yes.
Because it should be different. I mean, the bond that's done for in the wetlands should cover the regulated areas, and then the one that's submitted for planning and zoning is usually beyond that.
Okay, then I need to, I'll revise that. I didn't, it's the same. So we're up, I think it's a March meeting before P&Z. I'll make sure that gets revised. Now, do you get that one also? No, that just goes to P&Z.
No, I get both of them, yeah.
Okay,
And
And
that's
you-
why there's
okay,
a
you'll get it.
difference between, because I try to make sure that there's not an overlap on the
Yep,
bottom.
yep. I know we went over this one at your office a few weeks back.
Okay.
Okay. Scott was concerned about the overflow drain. I didn't yet submit the plans to DOT, which I will. I also have a sightline plan that will go to DOT, so that we'll take care of. Scott mentioned a driveway sketch. What I had for my drainage comps was the existing driveway and the proposed driveway. I can submit for the record the areas that we talked about, since Scott mentioned that in his comments. That would be his comment H on his second sheet. The stage storage, I went over, well, it's on page 7 of the drainage comps. It was 40% voids, and that's in the drainage comp on page 7. Tables were provided on the revised drainage computations. So that should be taken care of. Water quality volume, I have a statement here. What I did is I took all the proposed impervious areas and came up with a figure of 752 cubic feet required. There's a bed of stone under the concrete stormwater galleys that only has a volume of 448 cubic feet, so we're shy. So that's one of the reasons that I introduced a stormwater cleaner. So the stormwater cleaner will take care of the quality of the water. Where now there's not one, and there will be one if we get the approval from your commission and planning and zoning. Scott wanted to know about the, on item 7, more detail of the drainage system units showing the method of interconnection. There are 1-foot high concrete galleys. There'll be 4 rows, 56 feet, a foot between them. And underneath, there'll be a 12-inch depth of stone. And between the concrete galleys will be an 1.5 inch stone. So that's the interconnection between them. There's only a foot between them, so placing pipes between them, I didn't think made too much sense where the water's going to seep through and load up the proposed galleys. Again, he mentioned the markers. We can put them, he says okay, along the site disturbance line as marked on the site plan. There was a request that the catch basin in the parking lot be changed from a 3x3 yard drain to a full-size type CL catch basin. That's been changed and shown on the detail also on the plans before you. And the rest is on the plans. Yep. The roof leaders, just going over some of the comments from this commission from last time too. Site disturbance line was 1, it's now shown on the plan. Trench drain detail, that's on the detail sheet. Someone suggested we put the septic tank outside the fenced-in play area. That's been done and it's shown on the site plan.
It's right here.
Wetlands markers, okay, we said we would. I show a stockpile area that was requested. That's on the revised plan. You requested a photometric plan. I reached out to a lighting manufacturer and sent him my plan. Unfortunately, I don't have that tonight, but I did send him the parameters from what's required in the zoning regulations. And I'm sure we can get lights to light up our parking lot and make sure we cover the concerns of the zoning regulations. I think that was it. Oh, okay. I do show the roof leaders on my plan. I didn't know where, and I couldn't find where the footing drains outletted. So if you're facing the building from the street on the left side in the back corner, I show a proposed footing drain, PVC pipe going into a bed of stone. I didn't connect the roof leaders. The roof leaders have been there since the house was built in '58. If you wish, the town engineer wishes, I can run a pipe, connect them, and go into that outlet. And I think I covered what was requested from last time. Questions?
One of the other things that was mentioned by Aquarian, you did touch on it briefly, was the reserve septic system.
It's not-
Now, I realize this is grandfathered in because the building isn't being changed. But Aquarian and the Wetlands Commission have different areas of jurisdiction than does the health department. And if Aquarian would like to see a reserve area, I think it's probably a good idea, because this is a completely different use. We're talking about, I don't know how many youngsters that'll be in there using the John all day long.
That's fine.
Well, I personally think it would be a good idea to have a reserve allocated.
That's not a problem. And again, as I stated last time I was before you, it's not a requirement of the Connecticut Health Department, or was not a requirement of your health department. But I could also, the reserve would be, it'd be from where I show the septic system, it would be down gradient, 12 to 15 feet, and it'd be the exact same type of units that I would use. That's the reserve area.
Okay, so that should be depicted on the plan.
It's no problem.
One of the other things that I would like to request that on your maintenance plan, if there is some kind of a maintenance plan involved, that no pesticides or herbicides be used as a regular maintenance thing, because it is in a public water supply watershed. Was there test pit data provided to
For the
show that
stormwater units?
Yeah.
I went over that with Scott before the last meeting, and I have a test hole that's in close proximity, 101, and I had the, it's logged there.
Okay.
It was my opinion that that would suffice. I thought when I met with Scott at his office that he agreed, and if you look at his latest comments, he did not include that on his comments.
Okay,
There was one relatively close,
okay.
but not exactly in the center of the proposed. I know another one.
As long as the recharge system works, that's
Yeah,
what counts.
I think one of the other comments were about the historic flooding of the area. I did notice after one of the rains, when I was out there hunting for the footing drain, that the existing parking lot is shaped like a soup bowl. So that's the historic flooding. It does flood. There's no place for the water to go. It can't get to the wetlands, can't get to the stream, unless it gets so high, then it gets there. But Scott mentioned to me, people always said when they went by, it was always water, standing water. And that's because of the shape of the existing parking lot. That's all it is. Which will be corrected if we get our plan approved.
How you doing there, Lois?
I'm fine, I'm done.
You done?
Mm-hmm.
Done. Anything else for the order here? Scott, you okay?
What is that?
Do you have anything? Was all your comments addressed to?
No, well, they submitted stuff tonight, I haven't seen it, so. And they're indicating they've got additional information here for you, so I'm not sure what you guys are thinking.
Chair, I'd believe that if some of the comments that were remaining that were left, that if it was part of some type of approval, that it's things that we could address in that phase. And 'cause I think
I
it should be
have a
relatively
concern
minor.
about closing a regular meeting with brand new information that has not all the way been reviewed yet. Because as you know, once we close it, it's sort of over.
Well, that's why I think the plans that we submitted on last Wednesday for
Right.
this hearing, I think that was the major bulk of the changes. I think the ones we have tonight are just small revisions to address some of the other comments. While not addressing every single comment, I think we addressed the bulk and really the major revisions with that Wednesday submission.
And we still don't have the photometrics, right, to make it all the way complete?
But I think we could.
We need that for P&Z.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Sorry, so the photometric plan is something that we have to submit to P&Z and will have to be part of their approval, and so,
We're also putting up some lights right next to the wetlands, right?
yeah, well, and that's why I'm thinking if we could offer a condition of approval that, what the, oh, wait. Where's the wetlands? Yes.
The parameters from P&Z, the lights will be 30 feet from the property line, and that stream, which will face our building on the right, is more than 30 feet. So that's the closest we'll be to the wetlands. The perimeters I gave to the vendor, the light vendor, and he knows how many, he's got all the P&Z regs that I sent him, and I'm sure he'll satisfy them.
Well, I'm not necessarily worried about the P and Z regs here, I'm worried about that.
They also mentioned that it shouldn't shine over the property line nor on any wetlands. So that's included in the zoning regulations. Water courses or wetlands.
So we could agree to a condition of approval that any photometric plan would demonstrate that there would be no light spillage onto the wetlands or a water course or over the property line.
Just as a note, for timing purposes, just to let you know, this is a regular hearing, so it has 65 days. A decision needs to be rendered by March 13th, which is your first March meeting. So you would have time to look again at the February 27th meeting, but you'd have to deliberate on March 13th.
Understood.
Okay?
Did you have something else there, Lois?
I don't, but I too am uncomfortable about closing the hearing without having all the information that our expert needs to look at.
I agree.
Um,
We've gotten ourselves
You'd
into
have
that.
to make a decision on March 13th.
Understood.
Okay, sorry. I said you do, yes.
Okay, so
That's
we
what I was
still have
saying.
another meeting this
You have
month.
another
We have another
meeting,
meeting,
but
and
you
then
have
we
to
would
make a
have to
decision
make
by
this-
December, by
That's-
March 13th.
That's easy.
Okay. I just wanted you to.
Does anybody else have an opinion on that? We have some new information tonight that our staff and expert has not had a chance to review yet. And we're still missing, well, I guess the more importantly, is some of the stuff has not been a chance to review yet. If we close the meeting tonight, it's the end.
Should be kept open for.
And we got ourselves into a situation in the past where we closed them and then there's been issues. So what's the feeling of the commission?
Table it for another meeting. So I make a motion that we table this meeting till the next meeting. So we can go.
You
I
don't
don't- yeah,
have
we
to-
don't-
you
no
can just
motion.
continue.
Oh, we don't have to make a motion?
Yeah, it just continues to the next
So we'll just
meeting.
continue this so we can once we can deliberate over all the
So
new
I think it's
information.
the consensus of the commission that we'd like to keep this open for one more meeting so that all the information can be reviewed. If you have anything else, including that photometric plan, if you can get that into the staff before our next meeting, which is what date? February 27th,
It's
is
the
it?
27th, but you would need to get it to me before that, the Wednesday prior. So
And that's the
it would
Wednesday
be
of the
the
holiday.
20th.
That's the holiday week too, yes? There's a Monday's the holiday there.
Where?
And President's Day, isn't it that Monday?
Oh,
The
I'm
18th?
sorry, I'm looking at March still, sorry about that. Back to February. Yes, so it would be the 20th, or well, I mean, really, we could go to the 21st. Because I'd have to be able to get it by the 21st to mail it out by Friday.
So the things you're looking for are the revised bond form, the photometric plan, the markers to be shown on the plan, the location where the markers are, the reserve area to be shown on the plan. I think that's all I have.
What's the feeling about was it the pipe being connected to the footing drains? Is that what we were talking about?
The roof leaders?
Yeah. He said that he can do it if we thought it was the,
I don't really have an issue with the fact that if they, well, what is it now? Just
It's just splash blocks.
Splash
Just-
blocks.
just comes
If
out.
it's out on splash blocks, that's the way it always was.
Been there since '58.
I just want to make sure we're addressing
It
everything.
gets a
that-
chance to filter into the lawn before it gets down toward the wetlands, so it's probably better not having a point discharge.
Okay,
Well, some of them are actually in the playground area. So maybe that's not the great.
Yeah, again, that's their choice. If they want
But
to.
if they wanted to put them in, why wouldn't they just put them into the new drainage system?
Because if they, the new
Well,
drainage system's sized for the increase, it's not sized for the existing, so if they put that in, it's gonna mess with the whole thing.
I understand that it's calculated, but it's calculated for like one time in what, how many years that it's gonna be at max capacity?
No,
So-
it's not calculated for that way, no.
It's not?
It really, I don't think they're gonna wanna do that, to hook it up to the,
It couldn't go into the system simply because the system in the driveway would be too high.
okay, so it
That's-
doesn't
Oh,
even have
so
the
it's
full.
that's-
have gravity.
Yeah, so
All right.
it's,
Now, if they wanted to, if you guys want to direct it so it doesn't go into the play area and you want to put it subsurface, then we'd be looking to see some type of a dry well or a bleed system so that it's not just a point discharge into the wetland. You know, if it were a new building being built, then we'd be looking for it to
Different
be
story.
different story, it'd be a retention system and the whole thing. Unless you wanted that.
no.
And then I think either the comment from Commissioner Spence was the revising the maintenance agreement to say no
Right.
no pesticides and herbicides.
Thank you.
I think that's all I have.
okay. Is there anything else that we want to make sure we have before we close this up on, or hopefully close this up on the next meeting? Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Okay, moving on to public hearings, IWC 2019-02, 11 Glen Hollow Drive, Ventura, second floor addition, new garage, driveway, modification, and detentions. The opening of the hearing.
Recuse myself.
Yes, thank you.
You?
Don't go too far.
All right, just be right there.
The record should reflect that Commissioner Jim Stewart has recused for this matter.
Good evening, Ardilu from Fuller Engineering, 525 John Street, Bridgeport, Connecticut, for 11 Glen Hollow. With me here tonight is Alexandra Mock, soil scientist, and Hugo and Paula Ventura, the owner applicant. Our client is proposing to add a second floor and a new garage on their property and do some modification of the driveway. There's wetland on. As you can see, the map is upside down. North is downwards. And there's the wetlands on the property is along the upper east side, which is the front of the property, and another wetlands at the back, which is the south side of the property. The existing asphalt driveway will be removed and changed into lawn. In addition, the second floor will be in this area, and the new garage will be here. Currently, all roof leaders are piped into the existing catch basin here along Glen Hollow Drive. Now, there's a total net decrease of impervious surface for this project. However, to improve the water quality, stormwater runoff from the proposed garage and the roof of this new second floor area will be directed to eight Coltech system with an overflow going to the existing catch basin in front of the property along Glen Hollow Drive. The proposed new driveway will be from Glen Hollow along the left side, going to the back towards the existing barn or garage. And then after our original meeting with Scott for the development, the property owner installed a stone wall here at the back near the wetland area in this part, and also installed a pipe from here towards the rear of the garage at the back. And in doing so, Scott made a comment regarding the wall and the disturbance along the wetlands or near the wetlands. So we hired the services of Alexandra Mock to do the mitigation and the planting of the wetlands. I'll give the floor to Alexandra.
Good evening, Alexandra Mock, wetlands and soil scientist, landscape designer. Just to walk you through the site, so we have two wetlands. Here's one which I call Red Maple Swamp. It is wooded. It's pretty much in natural state, and the only kind of problem which is in this area are the invasive species which are dominating the understory growth. As you see, this area, it's all wooded too, so creates a really nice buffer. The area slopes towards the wetlands, so actually this is a good filtration and wildlife support for the wetland habitat. The hydrology of this wetland is driven by springs, So there's one area of spring here, and then there's another area of natural spring here. And then also there's a kind of swale which feeds the wetland as well. The swale in the upper portion doesn't qualify as an intermediate water course. It's not being supported by this groundwater, and it doesn't flow longer than a rain event. But within the wetland
Excuse me,
area,
Can you clarify that, you just said that other than a water course? So is it a water course?
yes, it is a water course which within this section. So the lower section, it is qualified as an intermediate water course because it has the characteristic, it has defined channel. The flow is being persists longer than a rain event, and also there is some sort of alluvial deposit you can see along the channel. Now the upper portion, which was not qualified as an intermediate water course, it's actually, the channel is not really well defined here. The channel doesn't flow longer than rain event, and also there is no hydrophytic vegetation. So there is some sort of detritus, which is not enough to qualify this as an intermediate water course. Can I go back to the upper? So now I would like to talk about the southern wetland, which it's totally different, and they are both not hydrologically connected to each other. And the area drains, this is the slope, so the area drains down here. So just to notice that any activities which were conducted here were kind of down the slope. So, and I'm not saying that it was a good thing, but it was kind of fortunate that it was down the slope. So the drainage were going down rather than up. So this area is highly disturbed, and I'm not sure how it was created, but it looks like this was some sort of burrow pit, and the area was excavated. And whoever was doing this actually went all the way to the groundwater table, and now the table is groundwater table is just too close to the surface, and that's why it created a wetland condition. Originally, I was looking at the area of photographs. This area was maintained by as a lawn, and I have a photograph from 2012, before our clients owned the property.
So do you have anything, it doesn't go by when your client owned it, it goes by when the commission adopted the regulations, which were in 1988?
Right.
Do you have anything earlier than that?
I'm not sure. I didn't go that far, but before this property was purchased in 2012, this is actually a good photograph. There are other photographs, but unfortunately the foliage is there and you can't really see through. So this was the good one, which was prior to the purchase of the property, and actually showed, and you can see the trailer there. That's where the wetland is. It's kind of an image which shows mountains, which is this area. It's not that dramatic. It's more flat than it looks on this photograph. But the trailer actually shows the area of the wetland, and this was all maintained as a lawn. After the purchase, I think the area became more neglected, and maybe because it was wet, it was just left alone and developed into some sorts of meadow environment. And there are some invasive species of multifloral rose, which are in this section. There's a stand of Phragmites over here. And then this area also is affected by all sorts of accumulation of household items, including some large and on wheels, which was actually, they were dumped there prior to the purchase of the property again. What was done during the review after the application was submitted but not reviewed yet, was the installation of the stone wall over here. When this was done, a slight fill was placed behind it, And I asked the owner why the stone wall was built. And actually, I do remember first time when I went to this property, and it was a really wet day, and because of the sloping situation here, the water was overflowing from the wetland and entering this area, and there's a septic system somewhere here. So, and it was just kind of having this undefined and uncontrolled flow during the really heavy storm events. So the owner wanted to just kind of confine this area more and define it and keep the water into the wetland area and not spilling over to the yard. So that was the purpose of the wall, and there's like a little berm behind it. The area, and to correct the violation, we would like to propose, first of all, we're going to establish a really good buffer with native shrubs, which is going to be a good barrier between the activities going on along the yard area, and we'll kind of keep the wetland area separated and protected. I think the wall will add to it, to this separation protection. The area behind which was disturbed is going to be reseeded with native wetland mixed meadow, which is going to not only enhance and add to the diversity of the plant material which is already there, but is going to create new food source for wildlife. Now, the multiflora rose, if left it alone, we know that because of the natural succession, it is going to turn this into scrub environment. And as we know, we have, most of our wetlands are actually red maple swamps, and we have plenty of them. We do not have many meadow environments, and meadow environments are very important, especially for pollinators. So we would like to maintain the meadow environment. In order to do this, we're offering that the multiflora rose is going to be removed, and the area is going to be reseeded with natural wetland meadow mix. We are going to remove all the objects which are not naturally there, and the area, because some of them are large, the area which are going to be disturbed by the removal, again, is going to be turned into a beautiful meadow. So I think this is going to be a huge improvement, especially when you look at the 2012 area photo where you have manicure lawn, and now you're going to have actually functioning and really wildlife attracting wet meadow. Also, we are offering mitigation or buffer enhancement along the new driveway, which is actually going to be an improvement, even though the driveway is going to be longer, but it is going to be vegetated and is going to allow the stormwater naturally infiltrate, and also it's going to manage the stormwater runoff better. So this is going to be a nice buffer, which is going to be supporting the edge of the disturbance with installation of this driveway. It's going to, again, separate the yard area from the natural area. This is all wooded here. And also it's going to support this wetland in the corner. And I'm here to answer your questions.
And when I looked at the pictures that you were referring to, that didn't look like grass areas, I mean, it looked like a pond. In several of the pictures, it looked more like pond than grass.
It's not really a pond. I never seen this area being flooded. There's some micro depression, and I can see maybe there is some standing water after a very heavy rain event. But because of the slope, this really kept overflowing onto the area towards the existing barn, so and the septic. So there was like really no environment, or this is not a really area where you could have flooded and maintain the standing water because of the slope. Now with the wall and the little berm, maybe we'll have a little bit more flooding.
The area that holds the debris, is that outside this wetland area, or is that inside the wetland area?
Inside.
Inside. So the wall that we see in photo 1 on your wetland assessment, the very first photo shows 2 toilets and some interesting other objects that are not definable. They're in the middle of this wetland?
Yes, there
What
actually
is the
some-
area to the right of that? It's all gray. I see the wall, but there's no continuing picture, so I can't really get a point of reference.
Well, actually, the upper picture, I took 3 pictures and I put them together to make the panoramic picture of the entire wetland because it was hard to include it on one picture and shows all the details. But it is taken from the one angle, but it shows the entire area. And then you have evergreens, which are here, which kind of makes taking photographs a little bit more complicated because if you stand up here, then you don't see the whole wetland because the stands of evergreens will kind of, cover this area. So the photograph was taken from here. And then you can see the view of this.
Okay. And if I'm looking at this picture correctly, with the wall and the berm, it appears that that area has a higher elevation still than the area next to it. Am I correct on that?
Not sure what the elevations are there. It's really hard to read it.
Well, because there's a wall,
But,
I see a wall.
right.
And then I see the area that you're saying is wetland, which is higher than, is that correct?
Well, no, actually the berm is higher than the immediate wetland area. I'm not sure whether or not
Look at the
it's
picture
higher
right
than
below
the
it,
end
please.
of the wetland if
To
you
the
go
left.
to the very back, but it is higher than the immediate area, large immediate area.
Okay. I guess with the homeowner's permission, we'd like to walk the property. I don't think we can really safely look at this and understand what's going on without actually seeing it in person.
And there was fill brought in up to that wall?
Just behind it.
And that's not the wetlands, that's upland review?
Yes, that's entirely outside of the wetland, except for the new flag 16A. And I think this flag was relocated somehow, and probably that was the confusion, and that's why the berm slightly encroach upon the wetland area. But Scott asked me to revisit the wetland and check the boundaries, and I found that 16 was actually a little bit off, and so that's why we have 16A, which is the correct flag.
So it's your opinion there's been no filling of this wetland at all?
No.
Can you explain then what the HATH or HAHT soils
Well,
were?
this is like the new description of the highly disturbed soil. So this is,
Because I've never heard of that one
Red,
before. This is a new
disturbed.
one on me.
there's really not a good category for disturbed soils right now, so I think that's what the EP came up with.
Would that be closer to aquants or?
Yes.
It would, okay. Let's see if there's anything else I have.
And there's a proposed garage, existing garage. The existing garage is to stay?
Yes. It's an existing barn slash garage, and this is going to be the new access to it. Vice versa, right now it's a kind of driving through a lawn area.
And what is stored in there? Do you know?
I don't.
You don't know?
I'll be honest with you, I had trouble reading this map. There's too much information on one page and not enough on another. And what I would really like to see is existing conditions. Because when you have all the existing being buried by some of the proposed conditions, you can't really see what's going on. And I'm having some issues with that.
Would you like me to explain the additions? Which area are you struggling with?
Well, I like to see the complete layout, all the existing walls, the swales, all the stuff that exists now, before there's any proposed changes overlaid on it.
Is there construction equipment on site?
Yes, there is.
Can you come on up, please, dear? I'm sorry, thank you. Your name for the record, please.
It's Anna Paula Ventura.
And you're the property owner?
I'm the property owner.
Okay, is there construction equipment on site?
Yes, there is.
And that you intend to keep those there?
No, we're not keeping it there. My husband has a construction company, and whatever he gets leftovers and that we are going to use for our house. Sorry, my English is not
It's
the
okay,
best.
you're doing great, thanks.
Whatever we're going to use on the house, he keeps it when he has some leftovers. But it's not. We're not keeping it there to stay forever. It's just to use while we're going to do.
He's talking about
the
trucks
construction.
though.
So the
Is
equipment-
construction equipment, not material, like tractors,
No,
dump trucks?
we have a backhoe at the moment that
Okay.
because we have a bobcat that it was getting fixed for us to clean the snow whenever we need it. So the guy where we put the backhoe to fix borrowed us a backhoe, but that's going back to them, so it's not ours. We have old excavator and a trailer with scaffolds that we're trying to sell. It's not working. We're just trying to sell, but it's not going to stay there forever. It's nothing to stay there forever. We have our own yard in Bridgeport where we keep our trucks and excavators.
And the material that's there is for,
We
is
don't
that you bring there, leave there, and then bring out when you need it?
The material? No, not really. My husband keeps everything at his yard, unless when he comes home and he has like a few things in his van and he needs to take something else, then he just drops it there, but nothing stays there forever.
So right now, there's a bobcat, an excavator that's not working, a trailer with scaffolding on it,
Yes,
and
and
some debris. But you
Yes.
do not, I just want to make sure I'm
Sorry.
understanding you correctly. But you do not intend to leave those there
No,
and
no.
store them there?
It's going to be removed.
Because we are concerned with the fact that it appears that the area directly adjacent to the wetland has been filled and graded, and there's equipment there now. So that's what the commission gets concerned about.
Okay, yeah, there is some bricks and some.
I would like to, would it be okay, you, as a property owner, would it be okay if the commission came and looked at the property? It's
Sure.
hard to tell sometimes with some of these maps and
Yeah.
pictures,
No problem.
and we get a better idea of what's going on if
Yes,
we could see it
sure.
in person. That would be okay with you?
That's fine.
Anything else, Lois?
Like I said, without existing conditions, it's really hard to determine what the proposed conditions are going to be. I would like to see strictly like an existing conditions in that, with contours and everything written in on it.
Anybody else in the commission have something they want to say?
Yeah,
Before we continue, as to where we are now.
I'd like to
One
walk the
comment.
property.
The overhead lines run like over the septic, I'm sorry, the wetlands, excuse me. The overhead lines go over this wetlands area, and they keep that, they have to maintain that, like keep it cleared so that if the lines come down in a storm, they gotta drive in there and fix it. I mean, it's kind of a forest area, right? Like it's kind of a wooded area, the lines are running through.
We're talking about next to the driveway?
No, the overhead lines to the
No,
house, it's coming off Wheeler Road, actually, on the north, thing, now, not good with my compass. northeast side, I guess. They're coming off of Wheeler Road, overhead lines, that are CLP pole 41, CLP 42.
Yeah, they're not showing any kind of easement.
There's also
I mean,
utility box.
the only time they'd have to, the time they'd have to go in there would be to actually set a pole.
Or if a tree fell on the line.
Yeah, well, the lines, yeah, they can do most of that work without.
That's normal, that's normally acceptable to leave that like that?
No,
existing.
no, it's not. I'm assuming, though, that that's always been there. I mean, that goes back with the house.
Oh, of course, but there's also I guess this may have been by an older house on the road, but there's a utility box right in front of the house.
Interesting to note that the two poles are not in the wetland.
They're just on the outside.
Yeah, they're just on the outside. Interesting.
Okay, so I, for one, would like to take a look before we proceed. Is there anything else that we need to address directly before? We obviously would like to continue this hearing until our next meeting. Is there anything else that we need to address right now before we go look?
Did we just get these two?
Yeah, that one.
Now we need to look at the staff comments and that kind of stuff, so we just got new information, so. So where is this? Yeah, I need to look at this. I can't wrap my head around it right now.
Okay. Do we have contact information, Donna?
I do, yes. The email and the phone number on the application.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. That's right.
All right, let's continue to our next meeting. We'll have a chance to look and we'll have a better idea of what we need, right?
This is included in the drainage and existing.
Yeah, she's looking for more of the actual survey that was done for it. Yeah. That's already in the drainage columns, so.
Oh, all right.
it's not
yes.
really- so-
Nothing new. So if we could have an existing conditions map, the survey of how things are right
Yeah,
now.
we'll include existing condition only and then
That
another
would be
set
great.
for the proposal.
That would help
Okay.
me a lot, thank you.
And did you give them the timing information on this?
It just opened.
Yeah, oh, that's right, okay, so.
We just opened today, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
sorry.
Yeah,
It's okay?
we're good.
Okay, so we're gonna continue this until our next regular scheduled meeting. In between now and then, what will happen is a group of us, a smaller group, not all of us at once, will be in contact with you and we'll ask you if we can have access to the property. Usually what we do is we call when we're out doing the site walk, we'll say, hey, there'll be a few of us. Though that time, obviously it's your property, you're welcome to be there, but we do not discuss the merits of the hearing at that point. We would just want to go take a look at, see what goes on. If we start discussing, it turns into a meeting, and we can't do that. We'll be in touch. It might be two groups of three, or however it works out when we're out moving around. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay.
And call me, we'll discuss the other stuff so we can maybe whittle it down.
Okay.
This is a public hearing, so I have to open, do I need exhibits and
It is usually a good idea to do that each time, so,
Okay.
yes. Just,
I just put it in my, it's already done.
I'm sorry.
It's not,
no, oh, you printed it.
I did. Oh. It's right here.
I still gotta do comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
So the exhibits are Exhibit 1 is Health Department comments by Rich Jackson dated January 17th, 2019. Exhibit 2 is the proof of a butter notification and mail receipts that was received January 22nd. Exhibit number 3 was emailed correspondence from Scott Schatzine. The document was dated January 22nd. Exhibit 4 was received January 25th. It's a copy of the sign, it's a photo of the sign posted at the property. Exhibit 5 were town engineer comments dated January 23rd, 2019 by Scott. Exhibit 6 is a map set, it was 9 sheets, titled Proposed House Addition by Fuller Engineering. The document was dated July 2nd, 2018. The revision date was February 5th, 2019. Exhibit 7 was a response letter to the town department comments by James Quill of Fuller Engineering, and the document was dated February 5th. Exhibit 8 was a booklet, which was a stormwater management report by Fuller Engineering. The document was dated July 2nd, 2018. The revision date was February 5th, 2019. Exhibit 8 is the wetland delineation report by Alexander Mock. The document was dated March 17th, 2018, with revision dates January 18th and January 26th, 2019. Exhibit 10 was the environmental assessment report by Alexander Mock. The document was dated January 29th, 2019, and Exhibit 11 were updated town engineer comments by Scott Schatzine. The document was dated January 23rd, 2019, revision date February 13th, 2019. And exhibit number 12 was the photo of the property from 2012 that was submitted this evening.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So this is a public hearing. It will be continued to our next meeting, but as a public hearing, I will open up to public comment. Is there anybody here that would like to speak in favor of this application? If you could just come on up and state your name and address for the record, please. Thanks.
My name is Sarah Signer. I live at 23 Glen Hollow Drive, so house right next door. We've had a significant amount of water coming onto our property, coming off of 11 Glen Hollow, to the point where it's literally a river running from their property down our driveway, and it's not only causing damage, but at this time of year, it's a huge safety concern. We cannot physically walk down our driveway without sliding down it. I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the commission because it's obviously a big issue for us.
Of course.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else would like to make a comment in support of this application? Does anybody here want to make a comment in opposition to this application? Anybody here would like to make a comment of a general nature as regards to this application? Okay, again, the hearing will be brought up again at our next meeting. There will be more opportunity to comment should you like to return. Thank you very much. If you can give us like 6 more minutes.
I'll go home.
The record can reflect that Commissioner Stewart has rejoined us. IWC 2019-03, 261 Moose Hill Road, Steiner, single-family home with associated side improvements.
We received a email today with a request that they, for them to withdraw the application. Just a little bit of history, I had, my comments went out to them, and I had found a significant encroachment violation into the wetlands by what looked like an abutter. And I think I'm gonna guess that they're trying to resolve that or deal with that before they move forward.
Okay, so this application has been withdrawn, and I will assume that we will see a similar or better application at a later date. So if anybody's here for 261 Moose Hill Road, the applicant has withdrawn their application, they will not be here.
You can go. If you have any questions, though, you can call the office.
Can we state our opinions now?
There's no, they withdrew it, there's no application. So if you have something to say to the commission, it could be, you either could reopen public comment that has nothing to do with any applications on the agenda. at some
Public
point.
comment on something we don't have a,
Yeah, in other words, it would have nothing to do. Or you could voice any concerns or comments directly to the department, the office.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
thanks, folks, have a good night. Okay, moving on to enforcement, notice of violation discussion, 4-7182 Main Street, filling piles of raw material within upland review area, 7182 Street LLC, care of Mitchell Deso, continued from our last meeting.
Oh, he's excusing himself.
The record should reflect that Commissioner Romano is recusing himself from this matter, as he has in the past.
What? Which one is
Oh,
yours?
it's not.
Oh, it's not plugged in?
No, it is.
Yeah.
He's gonna do a full. We didn't decide what we're gonna do. I wasn't here at this meeting, I can't comment.
Jason. Do you have more or is more recent information here?
Not unless we need it.
Okay, we're not sure what that means.
Don't tell me the natives are getting restless.
He didn't decide if we're gonna do a public meeting yet. So,
Will we close all out, the garbage out?
Yep.
Put it right on his pile.
see the best for us. Liven it up a little bit. Jim's just so stiff up there, he's never making jokes.
Me? Yeah, you guys are way too, not taking enough seriously, you know, this is important stuff.
It's rock and roll. So what is this?
Good evening.
Good evening. Bill Carboni from Spath, Bjorkland Associates. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and here on behalf of Mr. Diesso. I'd like to go through a brief history of this site because it's somewhat convoluted.
This, this is the site as it exists today. This is the property line that we're dealing with along the eastern side. This is an existing building in here, which Mr. DSO has his company in. There is a stockpile here, here, which are within the regulated area. One here, and some over here. Now, this is the Trumbull-Monroe town line. Last year, the Trumbull Planning Commission noticed that there was a violation, that those stockpiles were not authorized by planning and zoning. So we filed an application with them to allow the stockpiles to remain there until the property is developed in the future, which they granted us on August 28th. No, August 2018. What their concern was that the stockpiles were surrounded by silt fence, that they were stabilized and they were seeded. As part of that process, because it's on the town line, we're within 500 feet, the town of Monroe was notified of the actions that they were doing. Apparently the wetlands enforcement officer went out and issued a violation on October of 2018. We submitted an application for fill and excavation and filling permit in November of 2018 to allow the same thing that was done on the Trumbull side, to allow those, to stabilize those stockpiles and allow them to remain there until the property is developed. With discussions by staff, we were going to handle this similarly to what we had done with O'Keefe and Bouchard on Commerce Drive. And as part of an overall application, it will resolve any wetlands violations and provide a development, which we are now in the process of what we'll present tonight. In the meantime, this commission asked that test holes be dug to determine the extent of any activity that might have been done up in this area. That activity, if there is any, was part of the L&L Evergreen, who owned this site all the way over from Victoria Drive to the north, all through this area, all of this. They had submitted an application to this commission for their storing of their stock, their landscaping stock. In October of 2003, the Wetlands Commission considered the activities permitted as of right under the Connecticut General Statutes, and based on a map revised date to October 3rd, they approved that this, based on the above, the commission voted to cancel the public hearing, and there should be no longer require a wetlands permit. So a copy of that is of the letter.
Can I just provide a clarification on that?
Sure.
And this issue keeps coming up over and over again with various properties, and that is the act of storing or using wetlands for nursery stock is an exempt practice. You can farm, you can till, you can place something, a plant in wetlands, but you can't fill it. The commission doesn't allow filling.
Right.
And historically, that's what happened.
The map that is referred to, I don't have enough copies on this. There is, on this map, this is our property. That is a road going right up to that corner of the property. But it's not a road, it's a wooden deck. is what they said was allowable under that. That road that will be passed down came right down this property line and into this area. So more than likely, any disturbance that was done, forgetting whether it's fill or just an activity resulting from the construction of the wood deck or whatever, was done by a permit in this,
Well, let's
without
back
the-
let's back up a little bit.
so,
I see a site plan for the abutting property.
right,
Where's the approval and the plan for this property we're talking about?
there is not.
Okay, so
What
there
they
is
did-
no approval for this fill on this property, correct?
There's no, well, whether it's fill or not or something else. All I'm saying is that in 2003, the activity was permitted.
The activity
The-
on the abutting property
Right,
was
and
permitted.
L&L obtained a lease from whoever owned the property at that time to store their landscaping stock. And it went all the way up to 25, all in this area on both towns. So more than likely, anything that happened in that area was done in 2003 to 2006, give or take, and was done in here, whether it was on this site, whether it was fill. I'm just giving you a history of how this came about. This commission asked, there were test holes dug, but then this commission asked that the holes be dug and witnessed by a soil scientist. Bill Kenny is a soil scientist and a professional landscape architect. He went out and witnessed the holes in this area. I will let him present his findings on that.
Oh, there you go.
It's a demerit.
Big problems now.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, she didn't. It's okay.
Good evening. I'm Bill Kenny, principal of William Kenny Associates at Fairfield, registered soil scientist and professional landscape architect. Sorry for just getting this to you this evening, but I was on site on January 11th to witness soil profiles, observe soil profiles that were exposed when 2 test pits were dug, one in this area right here and another back here. I have a sketch attached to the letter that I just submitted to you that shows those test pits. We went down 10 feet in both holes, approximately 10 feet, and there was fill in both of those test pits. And at the bottom of those holes, we found some what appeared to be virgin soil. I will say that due to the fill, it's a very unsafe condition, and I was not able to go down into the hole. So the machine would excavate material, bring it to the surface, and I would look at it there. And it's not as clear as digging a hole at the surface into virgin, undisturbed soil. But you can see in the photos, I also attached some photos, and there's samples of the soil that came out of the bottom of each hole. And the test pit 1 at the bottom, we found soil that had the color of a wetland soil. And at the bottom of test pit 2, we did not find the wetland colors. I've identified under test pit 1, due to the proximity, it's much closer to the wetland that's been flagged just off-site to the east. And due to the color, I'm pretty sure that there was a wetland below that fill sometime in the past. There is a chance when you find those colors, what's critical is what depth they are naturally occurring from the surface of the ground surface. So a wetland soil, you want to find that gray color within 20 inches. Because of disturbance in the fill, I don't know if that gray, before the fill was put there, before disturbance occurred, was 20 inches down, or 30 inches, or 40 inches. But due to the proximity to the wetland next to it, and based on what I've seen on other projects another time, I suspect that the wetland did extend into that area. With the other pit, we didn't find the colors at all, so I'm pretty confident that the wetland did not extend into the area of test pit 2. That's pretty much,
So how much fill we talking?
at those areas, yeah, it's
How much?
nine feet deep.
Talking about 9 feet deep,
Yeah.
so they filled in
8 or 9
9
feet deep, yeah.
Because there is a bit, if I'm looking at it correctly from the road, it does look like there's a drop-off at the property line, or at some line.
Yes, yeah.
There is a drop-off.
Drops off quite
Which kind of
steeply.
indicates fill to me.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how old that fill is?
Except,
Before 1984.
from examining what was in the pit, I don't know, but looking
No
at.
old Coke cans or
Well, I didn't-
You're telling me there's not a
glass
newspaper?
bottles?
What's
There's not a newspaper with the date?
Newspaper
There was a
with the date
picture
on it.
with JFK's paper.
Exactly. Timmy Hoffa.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like Ike Pen.
But we've looked at some historic maps, and I know Bill's done a lot of research on that.
Yeah. This is the Monroe town topo. Again, here is the property line, the town line, and a building that was here that existed at that time. Going back just a little bit farther in time, the railroad ran right through here. Came out, was up in here. You can still see the remnants of it right in here. In the 40s and 50s, this building was a lumber yard. That's why these buildings are parallel to this rather than the road. They're parallel to the old railroad. But as you can see in 2008, in 84, this fill is already in place. And that matches pretty well what was done, what you saw on the last thing. That is about in the same location. However, in this area, there is some difference. And again, this swale extends further into our property than it does on our current conditions. These wetlands flags are Bill Kenny's wetlands flag that were done last year. So if anything did happen, and most likely it did based on the 2003 map, it would be in this area. So based on that, we prepared, or Bill Kenny prepared, a map showing for the restoration of that property. And again, these are the wetlands, that's the upland soils. I'll let Bill explain how this will work.
So this is an image of the northeast corner of the property. There's the property line right there. This area is the existing wetland that we flagged under current conditions. Basically what we've done is excavated down here. Is there something?
No, that's all right.
Okay. Gray dashed lines are existing contours. They come through here. We've pulled those contours back. You can see these blue continuous lines are proposed contours. We're pulling the fill back, creating a level area here, and connecting it to this piece of wetland here. Because it's on the property line, because we don't have control or ownership of this other property, this area is not part of this restoration. So we'd be creating a low spot here the land rises up a little bit before it falls back down in here. It rises up on the adjacent property, but we would create or restore a wetland area here and connect it to this piece here. We'd be intercepting groundwater seeping out of the hillside here as well. So we planted, meadow seed for wetland area in the wetland, meadow seed on the slope for an upland condition, plant it with native trees for both upland and wetland, and add native shrubs to the wetland area here.
About how far does it rise at the other side of the property line?
It would only be, so this is 294, here's 296, we're putting the bottom of the wetland, so 294 is running mostly through the wetland here. So we're putting the bottom of our wetland right at about 294, so it's only about a foot up, foot higher here. It's very close to grade of the wetland.
Okay. So it would have connectivity via the top part there?
Here,
Right.
yes, connect, yep, right through here.
But it would also, would there be connectivity between the existing wetland on the neighbor property with I'm assuming you're forming a new, by restoring the wetland, it's going to still be a wetland. Should there be some kind of connectivity between that one and the one that connects with the neighboring property? If I'm making sense.
So we will restore the hydrology here. By doing that, we might make this area more wet than it is today. But the actual connection will be made on this property in this area.
That's what I meant, that's what I'm talking about, because it appeared that has a higher elevation, thereby cutting off the wetland that's to the north of it from the pocket, should they be connected.
We can, trying to think back, because the 294 contour, so we pulled the 296 up, and this 294 is here. Yeah, we could certainly extend the 290, we have the 294 ending in this area right here to avoid disturbance there, but we can temporarily disturb the fringe of this wetland area and then physically make a connection there grade-wise.
Okay, I was just asking if that would be a good idea. You've got an isolated pocket that.
Right, well, that's a good idea. So that's not a problem.
The size will be dependent on what we find out.
Right, if you see the note that I put here, what we will do is, as we remove the fill, then our eyes will be more open with regard to where the wetland soil, the extent of wetland soil is in there. So the shape of the wetland along this edge and along the southern edge may move a little bit further out, or I suspect it's not going to get smaller. It might get a little bit smaller. I don't think so. But it might move a little bit out to the west and a little bit out to the south. As we pull out the fill, we'll be there to examine the underlying conditions.
Okay, if you did find that the wetland, I'm going to call it the pocket wetland right now because
Sure.
it gives it a name.
Yeah.
If you find that does extend quite a bit to the west, is that going to change your contours
Yes.
that you have rising from it?
Yes.
So it will be a steeper slope? Or do you
Might be a little bit of making it steeper and perhaps moving it ultimately a little bit more.
Okay, so the red line then is not a permanent definitive line?
Subject to change.
It's subject to change.
Based on
Okay.
conditions that we
All righty.
observe.
This remediation plan we are proposing to do now. But we also, as we've done in the past, find it, have proposed,
Oh, you hit the wrong one.
I know. Where's the listing again? This one?
Those are the
Yeah,
minimum.
to one to the left.
The white one.
Go to the left. The white one, no, up above, up above.
There you go, right there.
There you go.
Click.
Yeah. This is, as we've done on past projects, this is the possible future development of the site. Again, it's, the town line goes through here, so the building will be across in two towns. There'll be circulation coming in here and around. There's also a lower driveway in here. What is proposed here is a mixed-use property where the first floor of this building will be retail commercial, and the upper story will be 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. On the back in here, there is a garage under type of thing where Mr. DSO will maintain his business on this site. This line right here is the limits of disturbance. And again, that area that we're talking about is in here and does not extend up, or at least in the plan you just saw, does not extend up to the LOD line. So all of this is there to show that we have a development plan. This plan that's on the screen now is very aggressive, but we wanted to use that to show you the maximum extent of development. And anything we most likely will do will be somewhat less than this. Again, there's a lot of details. This was not intended to be a detail, but the parking, the runoff from the parking areas and the buildings will discharge into that wetland area after treatment, of course, but to maintain the wetlands wet. So this is our plan for the future of this. What we had done on the other two site plans that I had talked about was, this was a plan that was most likely 5 years out. We will do the immediate plan next spring when it's feasible to do it. And if this doesn't come back to you within a stipulated amount of time, there will have to be more remediation done. But the only thing that we are applying for tonight is to allow the stockpiles that are there to remain there until we can get more development on this plan. And I think, again, that is relatively easy. Not that the violation shouldn't be addressed, and I believe we have. We have a plan for the immediate restoration of it. It fits in the long-term plan. But that takes care of the violation. To allow it to continue, and again, the stockpiles have already been surrounded by silt fence. They have been hydro-seeded. That's a little bit sketchy because there's not much soil in there. It's mostly rocks, but it has been hydro-seeded to the extent that it's possible.
Are those stockpiles indicated on the, on either of these maps?
I don't know which two you're looking at.
Well, we only have two. We have the remediation map and the proposed future,
No,
possible
in the
future.
existing conditions map, which is this one, which was filed with the application.
All right, let me.
We don't have an application.
Yeah, let me clarify a few things because
Yeah,
you're getting ahead of ourselves. All right, a little bit of clarification. I issued a notice of violation. They came before you and indicated, you did some talking, and the commission asked for test pits to be done. They went out, they dug test pits, they came back with some information. You said, well, that information's fine, but we need a soil scientist to prepare a report and to address that. So they went back and got that done. And so I thought that here we are tonight doing an NOV, meaning that the
Right.
owner is here before you to just discuss it informally. And I appreciate that you are,
To
and we're
determine
making
the
progress, so that's good.
limitation.
Normally, the commission would just be talking to you tonight and determining what process they would like to see to resolve this. But it's not a bad thing. You guys have jumped ahead a little bit, and you've already prepared a plan, and you already have information for you, so they've done that. We haven't received, normally we receive a submission. We don't call it an application because it's remediation, so it's a submission form. There's a fee for that and a form for that. So we would have to do some house cleaning and have that done. That's one thing. And then as part of that remediation, I think we could accomplish everything you're looking to do, like that you're talking about tonight. So you don't need a formal application because you're not applying to do any development. You're just showing a conceptual plan that you'd like to do in the future. So that's something they can discuss at that. And we don't have to have that separate meeting. I mean, if you think what you got tonight is good enough for that, we can kind of just proceed, and then they can just follow up with filing the submission form and the fee, and we can make everything work. So, it's appreciated that you brought all that stuff, and we're kind of moving forward quickly, but that's kind of what's happening. I think there's a little bit of confusion that you were thinking that you had an application for development.
No, we had an application submitted in December for a excavation and filling permit,
Yes.
which was to allow this to remain the way it is.
But that was to P and Z, not to us.
No, it was to
No.
Wetlands.
So Bill, there were two applications,
Right,
and then we were, because the violation had come up. The other day, you picked up the one for P and Z. I
Right.
could have given you the one for Wetlands back. I still have not done anything because we were waiting for guidance from you.
well, our understanding was we filed the application and that's supposed to be accepted at the next hearing.
No, we had specific instructions from you to hold off on that. I have no
On the
follow-up.
planning and zoning, yes, not on the wetlands. In any case,
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a
So
good
the
idea
development.
to resolve the violation before you submit a development plan for an excavation or a fill permit.
well, all we want to do, again, getting back to the original thing, we want to do here what was done in Trumbull, allow these stockpiles that are in this area that are in a regulated area to remain there until some future plan and development is done. So,
Okay, so you're
we have
working through
that's
that
another
tonight.
This is technically another violation,
Yeah.
but we have asked to have it legitimized. And then there's potentially another one here, although that's most likely 10 or 15
So
years
you
old.
could do that as part of this process, because it's a violation. Violations are processed not through a formal application, they're processed through an informal
Submission.
discussion with the commission.
Then in that case, can we take the enhancement plan and our response to your violation and include the stockpiles?
Okay, so you're discussing that with them, and
Well, first of all, we need to know where the stockpiles are. And secondly, we need to know if this is it. That's the only thing we're going to do. If we were to entertain this, would there be any change of the stockpiles? Would there be any additions, any subtractions, anything? Or would that be a permanent stockpile until this application were submitted?
Right.
We need to have a lot more information before we can give blanket
I
permission
think
for that.
your wetlands violation report pretty well sums that up. They have pictures of what is contained in the stockpiles, and it's stones, rocks.
No, not what is contained in them, but where they are, how big they are, how tall they are, where,
Right, that's,
are they going to be fluid or are they going to be stationary? I drive past that site all the time, and it's always changing. I mean, constantly, I can't believe how many how many piles of dirt and rocks have moved in and out and been moved around. So I can't really say, you know, "Oh, yeah, you can do that," because how do I know it's gonna stay that way?
This is the existing conditions. It's shown in here, it's shown the extent and
We don't
yellow-
have that.
What?
I don't have that map.
I don't have that either.
It was submitted.
So you're
again, it
saying that was part of that
Was that-
That was
application?
all part of the application.
Well,
Apparently it's not gone anywhere. So this is the extent of it, it's the height of it. There are other ones up in here, but that's not related activity. So these are what is there now. It will not change until, you know, we come in with a development plan.
How long is that gonna be?
How long do you think? Until you come up with a development plan? Within a year?
that, I don't know if that's realistic, because first
No,
of
no,
all.
no, that's not construction. That's to come in with a plan to this
Yeah,
commission.
well, what I was gonna say was,
problems are gonna
the
be closed
potential
down.
development plan that you have,
Right.
I mean, it's not even allowed in Monroe. You'd have to change the zoning
Yes.
regulations. We have no mixed-use development,
Yes.
and that's not gonna be a quick thing, that's gonna take you a while to do that.
The mixed use for us on the Trumbull side, we can always be eliminated going onto the Monroe side.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
If
so I mean,
we,
there is mixed use approved on the Trumbull side.
So you could do it without, all right.
Right, it can be eliminated. We put
But-
it there, if it's allowed, we can do it. If it's
we'd
not,
ra-
we-
we'd rather
So your
change the
projection
zoning
is a
allowed,
year.
Projection,
obviously.
right, yes.
But, again, the footprint of the building, whatever we come up with finally, will not change. We're talking about how many stories and the uses within it, which really isn't going to affect the wetlands. So, yes, we could come in within a year, hopefully, we could come in with a plan of development. Simultaneously, we will be doing, or trying to obtain a zoning change to allow the use. But again, the footprint of the building.
How much is in those stockpiles? How many yards? Approximate.
I'm really bad at guessing at that.
I have no idea, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I know.
4,000 yards, I think. I think it's like 40.
So if you're gonna develop the property, you're gonna have to get rid of that anyway, right?
That's a guess.
I guess it's 4,000 yards.
And it's never been disturbed. My trucks go in and out of there because I have a mechanical business and I park. But we don't, that thing hasn't been touched since the violation last year. It has not been touched in fact. I have trucks that park all around there and it's garbage, you know. We had a guy dump logs, I heard you heard that story, a guy dumped logs, we're trying to still get the guy to get it out of there. But it's not been disturbed.
So,
I guess what I
again,
see is more of in the front.
Yeah, exactly. It's my trucks parked on the side. That's all it is.
what I would like then, in lieu of everything that has happened, is to have the maps that were submitted back when distributed to the commission to answer your questions on that, and then have allowing the stockpiles to remain until the development plan is done, be part of the approval of them would be part of the violation and that. And again, we have an enhancement plan that would, I believe, resolve the violation, and that we would start in the spring.
So let me just.
And again, you're saying there's no application for this?
No, you're resolving a violation. So what you're saying is you've got an immediate plan, which is the restoration of the wetland in the corner,
Yes.
allowing the stockpiles to stay, and then you have a schematic plan for the future, which may or may not happen, and clearly the commission is not indicating, if I could speak for you guys, in any way that would be acceptable, because they would look at developments and
Right.
determine if there's alternatives or whatever.
And I'm not saying that that's what will be the final proposal,
Right.
it's just the
But
most
what you're saying
extensive.
is they would come in within a year with a development plan, which would make which would address the restoration of the remainder of the upland review area. Or if you don't come in with a plan within 1 year, then you will come in with a remediation plan for removal of the stockpiles and establishment of whatever remaining buffer in the upland review area.
Correct.
Follow me?
That was an awful lot.
I was wondering, yeah, good.
Mr. Kenny, how long would you expect this remediation to be, to take?
To do the construction for that, it should be 2 to 3 weeks.
And the plantings will go in at the same time?
Now, let me ask the commission this. They have to fill out their form, they have to pay the nominal fee that pays for our expenses. Do you want to kind of wrap this up at the next meeting so we can do it? Or are you, are you okay with the plantings they propose and all that? And you want me to try to put something together after tonight?
Well, that's,
I
the maps
could- I
that
think
I
I could-
have, the maps that I have, does that represent tonight?
No. The maps that you have in our
Right,
November, whatever that turned out to be, is this map.
Is the survey map.
It's the survey map showing the existing conditions and the stockpile. I believe the second page of that was just details.
okay,
Those, again, with what were submitted last week, which was the planting plan.
which is that, yeah.
And the development plan should be all bundled into one, and that's what the commission should be using for your evaluation,
Okay.
is my opinion.
Okay, give me a second. Bear with me.
Donna, when you go through your list of what's been submitted, are you going to include those or not? The ones were done in
On the 11th, November,
November 20th.
Well, this isn't a public hearing, so we don't have to list
yeah.
them.
we
Oh, you don't, okay.
Right, this is just review, so
That's
this
fine.
is not a problem. That works in your favor.
Well, there was one thing that was not a problem.
So it is your opinion then, or your fact, that whatever remediation work that you do on this proposed piece will not be affected in any way by any proposed future development?
No, not necessarily, because we don't have the discharge and the water quality. But if there is a modification to that area after it's constructed, it will have to be replaced in kind adjacent to it. And that would all be part of the future development plan.
Okay, so I've got, for a resolution of this violation, the owner will come in, fill out the submission form for remediation, pay the $160 fee, complete the remediation that's been submitted on Kenny's plan by July 1st of this year. Sound good? With a 3-year follow-up reporting requirement, that they'll, the remediation will also include, the immediate remediation plan also includes the allowance of leaving the stockpiles in place for 1 year.
And the silt fence maintained.
With silt fence, et cetera, so let me, with
It exists
ENS
there now, but it's got to be maintained.
Right, with ENS, et cetera, I'll fit that in. They must submit a development application within 1 year from today's date.
No, from whenever the approval is, unless they act on it tonight.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting.
Oh, that'd be even better.
It's not a, yeah, so, so from the approval. If not, they must submit, and maybe what I could do is I'll put together a draft, you could, endorse it next meeting. They must submit development application within 1 year, and if they aren't ready to do that, then they have to submit an application for remediation that would include removal of the stockpiles and establishment of a buffer plantings on the remainder of the upland review area. Whatever that is, you would come in with your plan for doing that. Am I leaving anything out?
Sounds right.
Sounds very complete to
How
me.
long
Okay.
do they have to come back?
A year.
1 year.
Well, yeah, but they have a year to submit their plans, and then they don't, and then they come back. Okay, they didn't, so then you're gonna say, hey, you didn't do it. How long do they have to now come back and submit it?
You said 3 years.
Well, 1 year from next meeting, they have to come before you, they have to be before your commission with a development plan or a
A plan.
remediation plan. And if they're not, they get a citation.
Okay, I just hate to see them, no offense, but I hate to have to see them again. I almost would prefer to say they have 18 months.
Either way,
To,
we're-
18 months to remove and topsoil and seed those piles.
Either way,
And
we're
if in that period, they can come and get an approved plan for something else, then they're done. If they can't, then
All right,
we're
so
done.
You're saying the same thing, you're just giving them, you're giving them a year and a half instead of a year. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I don't need to see them again, because I've told them what they need to do.
No,
In that
Well, you gotta see
you
them
need to
again
see
either
them
way.
because they're either gonna have a development plan, you're gonna process that as a full-blown application, or they're gonna have a remediation plan
we
with
need to
plantings and
approve
all
how
that
to remove
stuff.
the stockpiles.
Oh, but I would have them remove it, I'd have them topsoil, I'd have them seed it.
Okay, well, that's
And-
something you guys need to talk about, is
And
that
then,
adequate?
then we don't have to,
You don't
talk-
want buffer plantings?
You see, if they're gonna.
well, I'm hoping they're gonna eventually come in here and do a development at some point in
Yeah, but we
time.
can't exist on hope.
Right, so what you've done in the past is you give them a break for a year and a half, whatever it is. Say, look, we're willing to wait till you, and because it takes time to put together a development plan. But if you leave it open-ended, you have
It
nothing.
goes on forever.
There won't be any, there is no remediation of that because it's gotta be totally, new violation, the whole thing. And one could even make the argument that, they were here before you and you didn't do anything about it in the
1 year's
first place.
fine. 1 year's fine.
Yeah, I think 1 year.
So typically, you have them come back with what they feel is appropriate to restore it. Now, if they feel it's appropriate to restore it with meadow mix or something, then you discuss it at that time. Or you could have them come in right now and say, we want that full-blown remediation plan submitted to us now.
No, I'm okay,
And-
if I can't deal with it all tonight, I'll wait a year.
No, I'm saying,
I'm
the
okay.
next
I'm good.
meeting, we could hold this open for the next meeting.
No,
And they could show you that plan now, so that in the future, in a year, there's no discussion. If they didn't do the development plan, they do the other plan.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So you could do it that way too. I'm just thinking, what they're thinking is, why spend the money on, not only spend the money on the buffer plantings, but why spend the money on the engineering plan to show buffer plantings if they may never do it?
Right. And that's fine. I mean, what you've got written, I think, is.
Those stockpiles are materials that we plan on using in the development plan. There is,
Where on earth are you gonna put all that rock?
well, you crush it.
You building it? I mean,
Right.
you're thinking about
this,
raising it
we're
all up?
raising the site significantly in that development plan, just so it's, well, so you can get
Well,
off
there's
the
a drop
road.
off, yeah, they wanna probably raise it up to get it
Well, I know,
closer to the
I've been
road.
watching the
Right.
parking lot.
When you drive by, it's like,
Fine.
don't ever, don't drive off that road right
You
now.
didn't want to do that yesterday.
Your car's
that's
just
for
going
sure.
down.
So, yeah, we're lifting the site up because I mean,
Yeah.
we can only come off the road at 3%, the driveways. And then we have 2% down to the back, so that's gonna be lifting it up.
Yeah.
Granted, we have an understory of this thing which helps, but we want to use that material, and why it was there was to develop the site. So doing it independently doesn't really work logistically.
Right, okay.
Okay, so you guys,
Scott, so wait, the question remains is, do you have enough to compose that now, or do you want to bring it next meeting for us to approve?
I'm gonna make a draft and I'll bring it to next meeting.
Okay.
Meanwhile, you guys can come and submit your form and your fee. And I think we'll be good.
Excellent.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to give Commissioner Romano a second to get back in the loop.
Yes. Okay, so the next thing we have is a notice of violation that we submitted for 485 Pepper Street. And that was, I don't know if you guys, where do Donna, did you take out the little
Dongle?
receiver on the computer, the little, for the mouse, when you put the,
I don't, hold on.
The powered on, Scott?
why don't we take a break?
5-minute recess.
Sounds good.
Oh, I thought she was aiming to,
We're at 5-minute recess.
I'm sorry, I thought you were leaving.
No, I was,
But it's a good break point anyway.
okay, hold on.
Okay. It's okay, we just passed halfway through parts.
Yeah, but you're gonna kick it into high speed.
And we didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah, but this,
Okay.
oh my God, you're right.
We're
Back
back
on?
on. Keith is back.
Okay, so you guys may remember that you recently approved 485 Pepper Street development for
Monroe Recycling and Aggregates.
Yeah,
The
Monroe
Grasso
Recycling.
Companies, Monroe Aggregates, and Recycling.
And basically, all this is we noticed that there was some activity on the property, and we have not finished the review of approval process. They haven't met all the conditions of the approval, and we haven't had our pre-construction meeting. So we wanted to get this notice out there as soon as possible before they got too far along and doing whatever they're doing. So with that, go ahead.
Very good. Good evening. My name is Peter Keiko with Solely Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the Grasso Companies for their the ongoing application for 485 Pepper Street. To open, I just want to run through a timeline of events that we saw. We met specifically with the applicant, Joe Grasso, earlier for this violation. End of November, they closed on the property, and they're excited about starting construction. As we know, the ROA process is ongoing at that point and is not completed. Beginning December, over the course of 2 days, they do conduct some work which is made up of installing silt fence, which applied to some of the SEC measures that are approved but not completed through ROA, and leaving a couple truck loads of material on site. That was the extent of the work performed. Soon after that, they received a call from Joe Chapman, zoning enforcement officer, who noticed work going on that wasn't fully permitted. So they ceased any work and have not continued to do anything to this day. Received a formal application dated January 29th through the applicant, and then are here before you today. The applicant now knows that they were not permitted to do any work of any sort, even though it was still fence and a couple of loads of material at that time. So we're here to discuss options for resolution. The end goal is to complete the ROA process with permitting. Solely Engineering is working on that response currently, and expects to have revised plans for you either later this week or next week. So the end goal is to finish the ROA, become permitted, and then properly begin construction.
So what's the holdup with the ROA? Why haven't the conditions been met?
Per some of Scott's comments, for drainage, hydrotech, we're waiting on responses from Contech for some drainage calculations, revising an intersection sightline profile and grading associated with that. So those revisions are underway.
Oh, so you're talking about revisions to the plan as opposed to?
Excuse me, not revisions, addressing the requirements of approval comments. In addition, or to add a little bit more to the violation, we agree that there was work started, but would like to inform you that some of what seems to be identified on the violation was existing prior to the application and was not any work performed by the applicant in the past year, or was due to due diligence such as test pits and septic inspection. So I have photos of when that was performed back in April or June of last year. So we believe that some of the items associated with the violation were due to that due diligence and not more recently done in violation, or are existing in the upland review area debris such as tires. It looks like there's what used to be an underground storage tank dumped back there, and other metal and debris that's been previously, before the property was owned by the current applicant, dumped in the wetland area.
Did they remove the equipment and the vehicle storage that's out there, that's unrelated to the development?
I was not out there recently. I know they did have construction equipment on site at one time. I do not know if it's currently still out there, but they're not storing vehicles or performing any work currently since the call from zoning enforcement officer.
How long until you get all the application or all the final materials in?
So this is the second round of ROA comments. We expect to have this satisfied either later this week or next week.
Yeah, I think they still have to post a bond too. And what about the building permit? Where are you with that?
They are eager to file.
Have they submitted for the building permit yet?
They have not submitted. We met today on it.
That takes a good couple, at best, a good couple of weeks, so.
Okay.
I think you're still a couple months out, a month, maybe 2 months out.
Mm-hmm.
It could go quicker, but.
Scott, is there anything in jeopardy with the fill and the
Yeah, the only thing in jeopardy is the sedimentation off of the fill piles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that would have to be protected. Right now, is there any E&S, is there any silt fence around that?
So some of the work that was performed in violation was placement of a silt fence below where they did end up those 2 or 3 trucks of fill placed above that. So there was protection done in violation as part of that work.
Yeah, so I didn't see it, so I don't, I'd have to confirm that what they did was adequate.
Don't we usually do the silt fence and protection around the base of the pile, not somewhere else?
Well, usually they're on the plan and they're at the limit of development, and this plan had a couple different phases, so the phase 1. Now, if they just did a stockpile or whatever in violation of their approval, I would just look to have the silt fence, protect what they've done.
Okay, but that's what it appears by one of these pages of pictures. It appears that there's just isolated piles that should.
There's like a row of piles that goes down the hill.
If I could add, some of those piles and fill was there previously and was not done recently by the applicant. We have on our survey those piles shown in topography.
Including the one that has a nice big puddle of water, looks like wetlands next to it?
So where the violation work was performed is just to the side of that trailer. Anything closer to the wetland or within 80 feet of the 100-foot upland review area buffer was existing. There's also a 9-foot deep test pit dug in the vicinity of where the violation located fill to be placed. So that also factors into some of that disturbance.
Okay, can we have them put silt fence around this pile area and
Yeah, if
give
it's
them
not already
60
done.
to 90 days to
Yep.
complete the paperwork and
Should, they're not permitted, they don't have a wetlands permit
They have,
executed yet?
they have an approval, they haven't met the
But it
conditions.
hasn't been executed as far as the bonds and all that stuff.
Yeah, and we wanted to jump on it, unlike the past, we wanted to jump on this right away so that people so they understand that they can't use it as a storage yard, because that's what it started to look like, that they had equipment, trucks and equipment stored in the upper portion, and then they were starting to fill. Everybody typically, not everybody, but a lot of applicants get an approval. They, especially in this type of business, they have access to material, and they want to bring the material and put it there because they're going to use it. So what seems like a very practical thing of bringing some fill there and putting it there in preparation to build. Great, but it's a problem for us because if they never do the work, if they never come in and get a building permit and they never build, it could sit there for God knows how long and just be eroding and whatever.
Couldn't we have them post a bond and put the erosion control measures in place as if they would do anyway? Like,
Yeah, well, they're required to do that. So I think what Jim said is silt fence immediately and construction starting within 60 days, or you would want them back before you would a remediation plan.
okay, that's.
Sounds great.
Sounds good.
Yep. Sounds good.
So what I'll do is I'll put together a letter that'll go out from it's from the commission, but a letter will follow that up. But you can relay that information to them,
Very good.
and that's what.
So no more additional piles, no more storage of equipment, no more any action until you've got your pre-construction meeting with Scott and all of your conditions met.
Correct, understood.
Good.
And the applicant has understood that from the time of the call from zoning enforcement officer.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Quick question, the fee and form for a violation, does that apply in this case?
I don't think so. I mean, this is so cut and dry, I don't think we need all
Okay,
that.
very good.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we have the application.
Yeah.
They already did, so.
Yeah.
Okay, there are no remediation submissions tonight. Application hearing determinations, IWC 2018-01R-A1, 98 Enterprise Drive, Bartoli, managing partner, request to increase the square footage of previously approved storage and maintenance building.
Okay, you guys may remember this one. You approved you actually approved two buildings on the lot quite some time ago. They never did it. They came back with a revised modified plan where they had one building and, what?
The camera, do you want it switched?
Yeah, I guess you can, yeah, I don't think we
What?
used it. So they came back with, they're now coming back with a revised plan where they want to make the building a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. But in doing so, they're going to move it closer to the property line, still within the setback, and they're going to utilize an impervious area for outside storage. They're going to cut that back a little bit to compensate for making the building a little bit bigger. So doesn't look like really anything changing that's going to affect you guys much, but they're submitting a site plan modification application for that. I don't know if you want me to read the rest of it, but no, it doesn't, because it's an amendment modification, it doesn't go into detail about the size of the lot and all that. But basically, that's what the application is for.
So do we think that we need this to be a public hearing or a regular meeting?
Or are we determining whether it's a public hearing, or are we determining that it's an amendment versus a full-blown application?
I think it is an amendment.
It's an amendment.
It is an amendment,
But we
wasn't
need to-
that,
we
I
need
thought
to-
I saw that written down somewhere, that the commission needs to determine whether or not we wanted a full-blown application or to be considered.
Well, in the case of an amendment, if you you ever see an amendment come in and you say, well, wait a minute, this really isn't amending your site plan, it should be a completely new application. You know, for instance, if they came in and the building wasn't in the same place and wasn't the same size, you'd be saying, wait a minute, this isn't a modification, it's a completely new application. But in this case, my input is that it is in fact a modification. So really all you need to do is determine if you feel the modification is significant enough to go through a public hearing, or is it more typical of a modification where it's minor in nature and you've already heard any comments that would be applicable to the impacts to wetlands, and you don't consider it a significant activity. So either way, you need to tell me which way you want to go.
What's your feeling? Does this need to be a regular hearing or a regular meeting or a public hearing? It's changing the size of the building from 120 foot to 150 foot. Additional proposed building permit will take the place of proposed pavement and will create no additional impervious area.
Well, you know what's missing on this plan, and this is the thing that kind of perplexed me from the beginning. So you're increasing the size of the building and taking away a whole bunch of parking spaces, and I don't see any being added.
Well, okay, I didn't look at that. That's a P&Z issue.
But it's going to be impervious, so that does change things.
My assumption is that they had extra parking and they can afford to do
Yeah,
that.
but they've taken away all of them.
No, there's still parking along the wall opposite the building.
There's no, that's not indicated in black.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's 10 spaces there.
Look at the red versus the black. Go to page SC1.
SC1?
There's no parking spaces illustrated there in black.
No, this
Only red.
SC1 is a plan that shows you the original approval. So
Right.
see, there's two buildings,
Mhm.
and then they show the one building,
And no parking spaces.
all right, and now they're,
They put
okay.
the proposed building right through some of the parking spaces.
Yeah, really what that should be showing you is it should be showing you the approved building and the proposed building, and they're showing you the original buildings. So, you're saying there's no parking spaces, the spaces are in gray and they're across, see where the crack basin is?
Yeah. So
Opposite the
these guys,
building.
these little tiny guys down here?
There's 10 spaces there, and then there's 10 spaces over on the, don't look at that plan, it's too complicated.
Well, that's the only way I can see
No.
what the modifications are going to be. And if it's a significant change, like there's a significant change to the catch basin.
All right, so what I'm telling you is,
Detention basin.
what I'm telling you is, I'm gonna have to get them to replace that SC1 because it's not
Because it's
telling you.
confusing me.
Yes, because it's showing you the original approval way back, the two different buildings.
All
That's
right.
not what was approved, just one building was approved. So,
So we don't have one
yeah.
with the original, with the
Yeah.
most recent approval, right? Am I missing something completely?
It is on EC1, you can see it. Although the building isn't fully shown, just the front face of it.
It's not very helpful.
Oh, you know what, on DM1, it's on DM1. mean, DM1 is a drainage map, but it shows you what they approved.
Oh, that's much better. But it does not show
Yeah,
the proposal. I would like to see the red lines
Yeah,
proposed in this.
and you just point that out. So
Okay.
the first thing I'm gonna get them to do in my comments is to replace SC1 with the proper plan that shows the approved building versus the proposed building, as opposed to the original building.
Right, right. So the drainage, then the basin is, there's no change.
There's no
on
change
this
in the
modification.
outer footprint of the development. The only change is the size of the building, and the size of it's a bigger building and a smaller outside, same impervious dimensions.
All right,
But I'll get them to correct that.
thank you.
So what would you like?
Simple minds get confused easily.
Yeah.
This was originally a
I
public
didn't notice
hearing,
that,
right?
because I pulled out the previous plan and was comparing it that way.
I'm sure it was, but yeah.
So, back to, this was originally a public hearing. This is, looks to me to be a slight change. Do you want to bring it back to another public hearing? Or do you
No.
think that we can get this done
I
on a
might,
regular meeting?
one last thing, I might add that I did do comments and I missed that. But my comments, you got my comments, they're provided and they're dated 2/11/19.
Okay.
But go ahead, Jason.
I move that we bring this to regular hearing.
Yeah, I think so, too. There's no right
Okay,
residential.
If there's no residents around, there's very little change that
very
would
little
affect
change
anybody.
from, that'll
anybody
change
around.
that public
So-
hearing. So I have a motion by Commissioner Spence to move this to a regular meeting, a second by Commissioner Masterrocco. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes unanimously to move this to a regular hearing. A regular meeting, I'm sorry.
Probably hear it, the next meeting, huh?
No, because I had to do the pending application, and you have to wait 15 days.
Okay.
Of course, so it's gotta be.
Staying with application hearing determination, we have IWC 2019-04, Five Bridge Road, Kimball, creation of 2 residential lots with dwellings and associated site improvements, Bridge LLC.
Okay, Don, you can get me that next file.
Bridge.
Oh, we were gonna do a public hearing last time.
Okay, so
This is two
this
different
application.
deals.
Is it? Oh, okay.
This application is, you may recall that you just recently had the same application before you, pretty much. Now, what happened last time was they submitted their subdivision application with indicating that they wanted subdivision and regulated activity. Regulated activity was for one of the lots that was being created in the subdivision, and it was pointed out that typically we don't process them simultaneously because the lot doesn't exist until it goes to P&Z, et cetera, et cetera. There was some violations indicated on it, and they ended up withdrawing their application. So now, I'm going to speak to both of these at the same time. You've got 2 applications before you. One is for the subdivision referral. That's this one for IWC 2019-04. And then you've got another one, which is IWC 2019-05 for building the first house on what will be one of the lots, but they're proposing it on the original lot. So if you can get your head around this, in other words, because they want to build the house right away, they're proposing it right away in an application on the whole lot. And with the thinking, with the risk, I might add.
Pretty smart.
With the risk, I might add, that it's going to end up being, that's going to end up being the lot. Now, it's a risk because in your review of the house on the one lot, you may or may not, normally you ask, well, tell us what the alternatives are. And an alternative could be, instead of extending down into the regulated area that far, why don't you put it next to it and have one lot? So that's a risk on their part that they're willing to take
Get
to
going.
hear both applications at the same time. But that's their goal. Their goal is to have that house on the big lot end up being the first house on one of the lots. They're strategically placing it for that purpose. Whether it happens that way, that's up to you guys. So the first one then is the referral, and you need to determine, what the process is for that.
Well, there's no
Again,
process.
there's a violation on the property, by the way, which is down by the lake, and also in the upper portions where they have cleared and put in what looks like a parking lot. So there is direct impact, direct activity in the wetland, right at the edge of the shore of the property.
With the violation? or with
Yeah,
the-
if you look down on the right side of the sheet, you'll see where there's a little appendage on the property, and it says there's a couple of docks. Well, down there, there's also a little, we talked about I don't know what you'd call it, but a shed or a small structure down there. That's not on the plan, and that they haven't gotten approvals for.
So do we have to issue a notice of violation for those first?
I think, it's a good question. I don't know if they're
Because
incorporating
if none
it.
of this goes through, I mean, there's always a possibility, if none of this goes through, there's an existing violation.
Yeah, and typically, if people have an application before you, the goal of a notice of violation is to get them in
Into
front of you.
compliance.
If they're in front of you with an application, you could take care of it as part of that.
We don't need to issue a notice of violation to acknowledge a violation, right? I mean, that's just a.
Yeah, I mean, if they're before, if
Okay,
they're not
we can-
before you
I
with
guess we
something,
could
then I'd
always
say
issue one in the
yes.
future if we need
No
it.
sense creating more
Right.
paperwork and stuff for everybody.
Alrighty.
All right, so it's the
So-
same subdivision.
So in
There's
So
no
05
regu-
is the house.
The what?
04 is the subdivision,
Yeah.
05 is the house.
Yes.
So in the matter of.
04 is
of
the subdivision? So we're
Yes.
talking about 04 now?
Yes.
Subdivision referral.
Okay.
So there is no process for that, because there's no public hearing,
Always
it's just a regular meeting.
It's, okay, so you want to have a regular meeting because it's just a referral, there's no regulated
Right.
activity.
No public comment.
All right, so let me get
Do we need a motion?
So I have a motion by Commissioner Spence to IWC 2019-04, which is the referral to P and Z, to move it to a regular hearing, which is our process, right? Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Move to regular meeting unanimously. And in the matter of 5 Bridge Road, IWC 2019-05, which is the single-family home with associated site improvements, I will entertain a motion on that. Would you like to move that to a public hearing or a regular meeting?
I'm thinking public hearing, the original one was going to be a public hearing.
It does appear to be
Because of the
impact.
public, doesn't appear to be significant impact at this time. But it may be in the public interest.
I have a motion by Commissioner Spence to move IWC 2019-05, which is the construction of a single-family home, associated site improvements, to a public hearing. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Who's that? Sorry. Keith. I have a second by Commissioner Romano. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Move to public hearing unanimously. Moving right along, I have IWC 2019-05, 269 Purdy Hill Road.
06.
Oh,
I-
Correction.
Oh, I made a mistake, it is.
I apologize, I
it's
should have
06.
seen it.
I
It is
apologize.
06.
Yeah. Sorry, Jason.
No,
It is 06 or something.
Yes.
It is 06.
It is 06.
So, this one, you also may remember that they came in and they got an approval for a development on this property. And for what, never went forward with that. It just didn't, I think it was more of a marketing type thing. But they're choosing to change the development. So they now are bringing in a new application which changes the activity I noticed in the upland review area, where you used to have, the previous approval had a detention facility in that area. Now there are some, the detention has been moved to the south portion of the property instead of the easterly portion of the property. And the upland review area, I believe there's some septic systems proposed for that. It's a elderly housing, or I got the wrong terminology.
Age restricted.
Age restricted.
Yeah,
Watch
but-
it.
Yes, watch it. Okay, so the description of the property is construction of 25-unit, age-restricted community with associated site improvements. An existing house on the property is to be included in the community and shall be converted to 2 bedrooms. The property is 10.2 acres. Wetlands on the property is 0.4 acres. Upland review areas on the property is 1.33 acres. They're not proposing any direct impact to wetlands, but they are proposing an impact of 0.31 or 13,660 square feet of the upland review area.
this was initially a public hearing, correct?
I believe so.
Mm-hmm.
This was Beaverbrook. Was it everything? Everybody was here for that. Everybody was sitting
I know
down.
Keith wasn't.
Keith meant,
Clark, were you here for this one?
I don't remember.
Corner of Purdy Hill Road
No, I don't
and
remember
Cutler's?
this one.
Okay, I don't think Clark was here either.
so I will entertain a motion.
I move that we bring this to public hearing and that maybe in the public interest.
I have a motion by Commissioner Spence to move this to a public hearing. Do I-
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Stewart. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
I would say,
Who's abstaining? Keith.
Okay. With one abstention, Commissioner Romano, motion carries.
Scott, in this plan, do you know if there was an inclusion of the original one that we did approve? I would like to see, be able to compare the differences.
I took a real quick look at it. I know, Will told me that or someone told me that the approval letters were submitted as part of it, but I don't.
The approval letter is in our package.
Unless you see it there,
Not, been looking at pictures, not the names. Let's see.
yeah, it's not a modification, so it's probably not something that is, if you're interested, I guess you could ask for that, approximate, I mean, it's not like they don't have it. But remember, it's not a modification, so that the need for that comparison isn't.
That's
always
true,
great.
okay.
Why don't I put it as a suggestion? Is that okay?
Sure, but even if they do it electronically, you can see it.
Ooh, was that you requested electronic plans?
I meant
For
that they
everything?
could put on
Yes.
the wall.
For everything?
No, not for
I
everything.
heard you. Okay,
Are you kidding with my eyesight?
so moving on, next thing on our agenda is deliberations from completed hearings. I don't believe we completed
I
any.
don't think we did.
That day, completed nothing.
Bond releases, RWC 2016-13 4 High Ridge Drive, request for bond release.
Yeah, I got a report before you for a bond release. They completed all the work and we're recommending the release of the bond.
I will entertain a motion.
Is what
I make a motion that we what do you call it?
Release the bond.
Release the bond, I'm sorry. I was gonna say retain the bond.
Do I hear a second?
Release the Kraken.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Gingrist, a second by Commissioner Spence. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes, the bond can be released. There's no time extensions, and Scott, right?
Yeah, agent approvals, we have one IA 2019-02, which is for 23 Pastors Walk for a shed. Permitted uses as of right. The Public Works Department has indicated that they are working on a cross culvert pipe on an upper section of Garter Road. I'm sorry, I should have gotten that a little bit better location for you. But they're telling me it's a replacement, so it's not anything new, assuming you are okay with that. And then we're down to enforcement items, deliberations on completed remediations. You did them at the time that they talked, so you're also okay with that. And administrative reviews, so we're looking at, all right, so we're looking at, the first one is for 37 Cold Spring Road. Oops.
No, the folder.
Oh, you already had it open?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, so here we have a, there's going to be two of these, 37 and 48 are next to each other. And these came about as an observation from our tree warden. He went out to look at a damaged tree and noticed that there was some activity in the town property in the open space. And so we took a look at it. There's a shed located in the upland review area on the town property. There's unpermitted clearing within the upland review area, clearing and structure located on the town property, and the clearing outside of the 100-foot upland review area on the town property as well. So the sketch of this is right here. And so, you have to look at this for a little while, but this, if you follow the orange line here, follow this orange line, you'll see that there's a sliver of land here that is the town's property. This is 37, this house right here on the end, toward the end of Cold Spring. And what they've done, their property line is this orange right here. See if I can make this a little bigger. So this orange line is their property line. The wetlands is this blue. And they have cleared this finger of land here coming into the town open space. So this is a violation here. They have an unpermitted shed in that clearing right here. And it's within the upland review area. Then there is a there's a good sized area of leaf litter. It's more than leaf litter, it's leaves piled there from last fall, I guess. And we're not sure where that came from, whether it came from this property or one of the other properties across the street. But at the moment, we're kind of thinking it came from this property, and it's just a continuation of their encroachment. And that is the extent of the violation. So the violation is for 37 Cold Spring Road. Obviously, it's really a violation on the town's property, but if you notice, there's this little sliver right there that is in fact on their property, and it is very obvious. you know, their shed that's, appears to be on the town property as well. So what would you like to do with it? Oh, I'm sorry, there's more, there's some pictures of the, there's the shed, I guess.
Pretty shed.
Yeah, so,
Time to make them move it.
and there's the.
That's 37, you said?
Yeah, there's the leaf
Store.
pile, here's the finger of clearing and disturbance.
That's leaves? Oh, yeah.
So the clearing comes in here, yeah,
it
so
looks
it
like
looks
wood
like
chips.
it's from this property, it comes in.
It does look
It's
like
clearly
wood
from that
chips.
property.
It looks like wood chips.
Notice a violation.
So, I believe we're talking about, yeah, here's the, it comes in this way, see this?
Oh, they're gonna be planting some trees.
All
And the
right.
leaf litter, is that in the wetlands or is that just in the upland review?
I believe it's partially in the wetlands, so,
And that's on the town property?
yes, see, it's in the wetland, it appears to be in the wetland, half of it.
Okay, and that's all on town property?
The town property is this line right here, so
Yeah.
yes, it's all on
Okay.
town property. Well, except for that little point right there.
Yeah, notice of violation, I guess we need to.
Okay, so that's an NOV. And then, next one is for 48. And,
Sorry.
so same thing, it came from the same place. It's same unpermitted, there's an unpermitted shed and hoop structure, unpermitted clearing with 100-foot, unpermitted driveway storage and construction equipment within the upland review area, so it's another one with construction equipment. Construction of a 3-car garage not in location of configuration is shown on the plan for the permit. So we found an original permit, but the garage that's there doesn't match the footprint and doesn't match the size and doesn't match the location of the footprint. Unpermitted trampoline, garden, debris, trampoline debris
permitted
located
trampoline?
on the town open space, and the clearing outside the 100-foot upland review area, which is also on the town open space.
They build it.
So this, you'll notice, is
You
the
gotta-
other, here's the
What are
finger.
they going for, squatters' rights or something? If they move into the
So
town
it-
property
You'd
line?
be
they-
surprised how many people do that.
So here's the finger and here's the leaf pile, but now we're looking at this property, which is at the end of the cul-de-sac. So this property comes down here, across here,
Yeah.
over here,
Wow,
and then up this
They
way.
moved their lawn into the town
So,
line?
so this one, you can see that this is the garage where they had an approval to build a long rectangular garage, but it doesn't match and it's in a different location. This area in here is paved and has construction equipment and construction debris in there, like a business. Then they've got unpermitted shed and a hoop structure, asphalt and clearing within the upland review area in this area here, which is also on town property. This is the property line here. They've got clearing encroachment on the town property here, and then they have unpermitted structure, clearing, and debris storage
This is
within the
gonna be
upland review
huge.
area over here, and in the upland review area on their property as well.
How'd you find out about all this?
We found out about this because the tree warden went out to look at a tree that they wanted to be cut down or trimmed or something, and
We
so.
didn't look for it.
He is
He's a
very
building to do.
tuned into, because he's not only the tree warden, but he's our park manager.
Mhm.
And he works for the police department.
Oh, he's the
So
guy
he
in the
knows
green
our-
truck?
Yes. So he knows all our
he's
properties.
very
Dave.
tuned
Right next to
into open space and town properties. And so he noticed it and reported it
He
to us.
doesn't like my dog.
Well, that was a.
So,
Okay.
in my opinion, we proceed the same way, notice of violation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So is the town gonna sell property to this guy? Because that's a lot of stuff
I
to
think you
put
need to
in.
cite our public works department.
Yeah, it's
for allowing
classified,
such
as I
things
said,
on
it's
the town
classified as
property.
open space. So open space is typically restricted for a reason,
Right.
so.
And if the building's not in the
'Cause
right
the-
spot, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
The
How
what?
do you get a CO if the building's not where it was on the plan?
He didn't get a CO.
Oh, there's no CO in the building?
Yeah, I don't think there is a CO.
Ah.
So, all right, so that's that. Now we're on to Jason with the rest of it.
I should probably recuse myself.
All right. So we're on to, there's no status updates, correct? So we're on to general discussion, the minutes of January 23rd, 2018 meeting. I'll entertain a motion on those minutes.
Is there a change, because I don't have a copy, I can't believe I don't have
Well, I can hand you mine.
January
Susan.
23rd.
Here, Donna.
It's Jason's. Move to approve with some conditions, not conditions, changes.
No, it's too late.
On page 3, there is 2/3 of the way down, Commissioner Spence asked for the new line.
Okay.
I'm thinking it's probably the line indicating the new septic line that runs from the building to the septic tank.
Yes.
Do you agree?
Sorry,
You're in
I thought mine was
violation.
off.
Curfew.
New septic line?
That's what I'm thinking it is.
I think so. I remember you talking about it.
And on page 5, at the top, Commissioner Romano recused himself at 8:08:05. And it's supposed to be just 8:05.
I think it was 88.
Oh, yep,
I think it was 88 o'clock.
It was 88
o'clock, yes.
Felt like it.
These are minor
3 days
little
later.
nothings, typos. And that's really all I have.
Any other changes needed on the minutes? All those in favor of approving, oh, I'm sorry, I need a second. I have a motion by Commissioner Spencer, need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Gingrich. All those in favor of approving the minutes with those 2 minor edits, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention?
Abstain.
An abstention by Commissioner Stewart. Motion carries, minutes are approved. Scott, did you have something that you wanted to talk about in this area, citations?
Yeah, I want to discuss citation just real briefly. I had a conversation with the land use attorney, and we were talking about citations as far as when we actually levy the fine, and that's sent off to the town attorney to file a lien on the, filed in court, and it results in a lien on the property. But he was explaining to me that sometimes just because there's a lien on there doesn't mean that it always goes before, that it gets resolved or goes before the new buyer. That there are cases where they don't learn about it.
How can that be? If it's filed on the records,
Well, it is.
That doesn't make
It-
sense.
It does, he's saying that there's situations where nothing may happen as a result of it. It's on the records, but nothing may happen, because I didn't really follow 100%, but the liens on there's a priority for resolving the liens on a property, and sometimes it's not, for whatever reason, it's not on the top of the list. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you guys is, do you think it would be a good idea to also file when a citation, when it's levied at the end, when someone has not resolved it, and has not been responsive, that we file the actual citation on the land records as well?
Yes.
That way, if they
You don't do
I
that?
thought we did.
No, we don't.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely.
think we should.
Okay, so we'll go ahead. We've got, I don't know, we got like 10 of them that were never resolved, that we sent to the, so I'll do those 10 right
Okay,
away,
good.
and then from now on, we get a
Now maybe we'll
citation.
get someone.
from there.
Good.
And the lien issue is because there's other people in first position, is that?
Yeah,
the-
like banks and
The
things like
banks and
that.
stuff. So there's no money to get past them. There's no extra money after they probably sell it or.
Yeah, and of course, the
Well, the
town
problem is
wasn't
that
looking for
those-
money, we're looking for a way to force them to come back, but he's saying the municipal
doesn't
search
work.
that they do would be even more, it would catch it
Effective.
more often. So between the two things, then,
Really, there's a lien on the property that might not be caught by the lien, by the,
not, they don't catch it, there's not all, all liens are not resolved.
Satisfied? Yeah.
I understand, but then does that lien stays with the property for the new owner?
No, they clear all the liens, and there's a process, there's a legal process to go through
I
that.
didn't know that.
So if you're far enough down on the list,
It just goes away.
it goes away, because it doesn't get paid.
But then the
out.
violation will remain, right? Because we still
Yeah,
file the
but my
violation.
point is,
notice.
but we didn't file the violation, or, I don't think we should file the violation, I think we should only file citations that they were non-responsive for.
We don't file violations on land records? So if a
No.
violation is still in process and they sell a property,
If the
I thought we
violation's
were.
in process and they sell the property, the only way they'll pick it up is if they do a municipal search and they come and ask the questions.
I was confused in that
It
report.
gets complicated because if we file all this stuff on the land record, everything you file on the land record, you gotta file a release for. You can't just file it on the land records because it's on there forever.
Right, I understand.
So that forces you to go back and you need to file a release when it gets resolved. So we don't want to muddy it up too much.
I get it.
So I'm just saying, why don't we just do the few that are non-responsive? In the end, we'll file those on the land records.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Anything from the Regulation or Public Outreach Committee?
No.
Any correspondence? No? Okay, our last item is motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by everybody, second by everybody.
No, I need a second.
Oh, you're so difficult.
Clark's the second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention?
Abstain.
Meeting's
You're
adjourned.
not abstaining.